went in there with no muscle mass already and you were bedridden for a month, the likelihood that after that month goes by that you're going to be back up and moving very quickly is relatively low. What's up, guys? In this video, I'm going to cover for you the topic of muscle hypertrophy. I'm going to talk about what it actually is, what it is not, why muscle growth matters for your health and not just for your looks, how you can train for hypertrophy at a very basic fashion, and some things to avoid along the way so that you can maximize your outcomes and increase the likelihood that you stick with it. So first of all, what is hypertrophy? Hypertrophy is the growth of the actual muscle fibers themselves, and not an increase in the number of muscle fibers. So hypertrophy is the growth of the muscle fibers, and hyperplasia is the word that's used for an increase in number of muscle fibers. Hypertrophy is triggered by training stress, which sends a signal to the muscles that they need to grow and adapt so that they can better tolerate that same stress or signal in the future. And this happens slowly over weeks and weeks and even months. So if you think about a construction project that's going to take place over 4 to 8 weeks, it's very important that you are just consistent over time with on-time delivery of materials. So if you have materials getting delivered 2 to 5 times a day, it's more important that you're just consistent with those showing up on time and that most of them contain the correct materials and have the correct amounts and all that kind of good stuff. And it's important that you guys let the guys sleep at night so you don't have worksite injuries, or so that they don't, quit or die from other health-related causes. And in a funny roundabout way, it's a similar way for hypertrophy, and that's why consistency is more important than perfection as it pertains to hypertrophy, because when you are training and you're doing the building process of actually building larger muscle fibers and building larger muscle over time, it takes 4 to 8 weeks under the hood for those changes actually to occur. That's why it's important that you just consistently get your meals in, the right amount of protein, good nights of sleep. You don't stress it and throw in the towel just because you have one meal that you missed or because you had one bad night of sleep or something. It's just about being consistent with it over time, but being consistently on the other side of that, not getting consistent feedings in, not getting the raw building blocks and materials that you need, not getting good sleep so that you can recover and do the work for the actual construction process going on under the hood can affect you long term too. So that's why consistency is more important than perfection as it pertains to hypertrophy, because it's such a long process. So why does hypertrophy even matter for most people, aside from people who just want to look bigger and stronger? So muscle growth can help with a lot of things, including confidence, appearance, resilience, mobility, and metabolic health. Some of those sound like just kind of woo-woo words or big umbrella terms, so I'll break them down a little bit later in the presentation. But one big thing with hypertrophy that a lot of people don't really think about is that it helps to improve your health span and not just your lifespan. So people think about their lifespan as like when they actually are born to the time that they die. But there's a health span involved in that too, because there comes a point where you don't really get to engage in the things that you like to do day to day. And having muscle can help you stay healthier longer or stay more resilient longer, allowing you to stay engaged in the things you actually enjoy doing, aka extending your health span longer into those later years. So what actually grows muscle? Now there's tons of things that you can do that I'm not going to put on here that grow muscle, but really it's about sending a signal to the muscles that they need to grow. And it sounds like duh, but I'm going to break down some ideal things you can do in the gym, because that's what most people think of when they think about training for building muscle. There are lots of things outside of this that you can do to build muscle. If you want to lift super heavy rocks off the ground, if you want to carry buckets around, you can do all sorts of things and build muscle. This is just how most people would do it, so I'm trying to make it as useful as possible. So in general, doing 6 to 30 reps per set in the gym, 5 to 30 reps is fine. Even less reps is fine too, but 6 to 30 reps in general is probably best to maximize hypertrophy while minimizing unnecessary fatigue and risk of injury. And then taking those sets near failure, so 0 to 3 reps in reserve, or a higher RPE, rate of perceived exertion, getting above like a 7 in the RPE scale, or 0 to 3 reps in reserve, however you measure your intensity, is a good idea with those sets. And then one that I like to put an asterisk by, but is a good idea, is probably training with full range of motion and good technique. This is just something you can do to reduce your injury risk, so you can get really good benefits and better hypertrophy outcomes by training through a full range of motion and in those stretched positions. But it also just increases the chance that you're going to be in the gym training longer into your training age if you're not pushing super heavy weights through half ranges of motion forever. It just reduces the idea that you need to increase the load so much and putting so much strain on the connective tissue where it may not be able to tolerate it, and it may cause it to break down faster over time. And then finally, One of the other key points to this is just make sure you're hitting the muscles, your target muscles that you're trying to grow, 1 to 2 times per week. Some muscles can definitely take on more than two training sessions per week, but in general, try to hit them 1 to 2 times per week, and you'll be checking most of the boxes for maximizing muscle growth. Some myths that we could talk about for hypertrophy, and sometimes things that people hear in the hypertrophy world, is that you need to lift super heavy to maximize hypertrophy or to grow muscle. And this just isn't true. So we talked about this in the previous slide. It's becoming more common knowledge that you don't need to lift heavy to maximize gains, but you do need to go pretty hard. You do need to go close to failure. You don't need to go to failure, but you do need to go close enough to failure that you're pushing hard and sending that signal that the tissues need to adapt and get stronger. And that's also the idea with, you might have heard of progressive overload. That's why it's important with progressive overload and getting close to failure, because you do need to go a little bit harder each time, or add a little bit of something, whether it's reps or load or sets or something, to challenge the muscles a little bit more, requiring them to grow and continue that process, that construction process, to build more tissue. Another common myth is that soreness equals growth. Now, there's a lot of nuance to this, just about the actual mechanism of what causes soreness and whether it's correlative or causative for growth. From what we can tell right now, it's not causative of growth. It's more of just a byproduct of training hard in some cases. So yeah, you will get sore, and sometimes really good training sessions that do cause a lot of growth do cause soreness as well. But sometimes it's just a lot of novelty. So if you go in and do something new for the first time, so if been doing high bar back squats for, 2, 3 months, and you get on the leg press and you push it hard for the first time in a while, you might notice a lot of quad soreness. And there is some growth that comes with that, but sometimes it's just novelty and some extra damage caused by the tissues not being used to that same movement, same stretch, etc. And it doesn't always infer more growth. So sometimes the soreness is actually just your body getting back from being knocked down a peg, if you will, or causing damage, to where it even gets back to normal before it can even build on top of that. So soreness isn't always correlative or predictive of growth, but it can be a good byproduct, just telling you that you're training the target muscle. So if you're doing a movement and you're training your triceps and you don't know if you hit your triceps, and then the next day your triceps are really sore, it's a good signal that you probably hit the right target muscle. But if you have a ton of soreness and it's really debilitating and hard to recover, it might just be an indicator that you need to back off a little bit, whether it's volume or load or something, so that you're not getting quite so sore and you can get back in the gym and be fresh again here in the future. A side note and funny analogy I like for this is, like, if you got hit by a car and you didn't die or have be hospitalized or whatever, even if you got hit and your shoulder's sore and your quads are sore because it ran into your leg or something, it doesn't mean that you're going to grow a bunch of muscle because of this. It's just damage. So soreness just is not always equivalent to growth. Just keep that in mind and use it for kind of a proxy of just if you're hitting the right areas. Another interesting one, since I'm on the high volume side of things, high volume being very effective for muscle growth, in my opinion, is that higher volume is always necessary for growth. And this just isn't true either. So when I talked about consistency before, you want to pick a routine and a duration of your workouts that's going to work. So if you can work out twice a week for 45 minutes, you can still grow a lot doing that, especially if you're a beginner. But if you think the only way for you to train is to go in there 6 times a week for an hour and a half, and you just give up because you think it's an all or nothing type of thing, it's just not true. So you can train at lower volumes really hard, shorter durations in the gym, still get great growth from that. So just keep in mind, you don't have to train for super long durations. You don't have to do a ton of sets to grow at all. You may get more benefit if you can recover from it by doing more sets for certain muscle groups, but it's not necessary inherently. So getting into the part that I was talking about before with health span, let's talk about a little bit about muscle mass and mortality. So more muscle mass or more lean mass is predictive of a lower risk of death in individuals. And this is for a lot of reasons, but a few are that it acts as a metabolic reserve, which again is an umbrella term we'll talk about in the next slide, and it reduces frailty related mortality. So I talked about a car accident before. Well, if you're a decrepit older individual and you have very low muscle mass and you get bumped into by a car and you fall down, you might break your hip and that might be it for you. But if you've been training your whole life, and it doesn't mean you're perfectly healthy, in your older age, but you're more likely to get bumped into by a car and just stumble a little bit and stay upright. You might have better balance. If you do fall, you might have some, glute muscle and thigh muscle that protects your hip a little bit. Your bones are more likely to have better density because of the loading, and they may not break as easy. So there's just a lot of ways that training and building muscle can help with frailty, being frail, frailty related mortality. And then in individuals, even with higher fat mass, that they have found that muscle is still protective in those individuals. So individuals of equivalent fat mass, so if both people are 25% body fat, the individuals with higher lean mass as well have found to be predictive of better health markers in those individuals regardless. And that is partly because of that metabolic reserve, which we'll talk about next, but it's just protective of a lot of things when we talk about insulin sensitivity and glucose uptake and all those good things. So, and then finally tagging on for things we've already kind of discussed is that improves outcomes in aging, injury, and illness. So if you think about people as they get older or as they get sick or as they get hurt, they're kind of not mobile as much. So if you have somebody that gets the flu and or if they get mono or something and they're in the hospital for a month or however long they're down for, having that reserve of muscle and your ability to recover more quickly so that when that month goes by and you're finally healthy and able to move, if you went down from, a large capacity of lean mass and you lost a bunch of muscle, but you get out and you're just kind of a normal healthy individual now with like not a ton of muscle, but still a little bit, you're more likely to be able to go walk. You're more likely to kind of be able to get back on your feet and do normal activities of daily living and get back to things a little bit quicker. If you went in there with no muscle mass already and you were bedridden for a month, the likelihood that after that month goes by that you're going to be back up and moving very quickly is relatively low. So that's what it refers to when we talk about it predicts recovery timing, how quickly you can kind of recover from some of that stuff, how quickly you can become independent, and then your ability to be resilient, whether it's resilience to the injuries or illness or whatever as you age. So muscle just lends you this reserve also for your health internally while you're still, doing all the things you love. But it lends you this reserve that if you do have something you come down with for an injury or an illness, or just as you get older, it gives you this reserve to kind of feed off of and to make sure you've created this cushion that can save you if you do get knocked down a peg from whatever the thing is that came into your life and knocks you off your feet. So now let's get into the muscle and metabolism side of things. So muscle kind of acts as what you could look at as like a glucose sink. So it helps suck some of that glucose out of the bloodstream and store it. And it helps do this especially more efficiently after meals. So it helps to improve insulin sensitivity. The more muscle you have, the better response you have to insulin and the less resistant you tend to be. And then it helps to manage blood sugars and even help with type 2 diabetes or people who are pre-diabetic, so like pre-type 2 diabetic. It helps to support glycemic control and then reduce diabetic risk in some of those individuals. So basically helps to regulate your blood sugars just by being a glucose storer, and it helps to efficiently pull it out of the bloodstream, making it kind of like if you think about a sink, sucking it out and draining it, helps to store it in your muscles and just control those actual blood sugars long term a little bit better. So it can be an amazing thing for lots of things in your life that it can improve, but especially under the hood in terms of blood markers and overall metabolic health, it can be an amazing addition for that stuff. So, what are some lifestyle takeaways from some practical changes that you can make to actually make sure? We talked about the actual training variables that you can adjust, and if you want to go into more depth in those, I cover those in other videos, or you can join my school group, school.com/Stoic Training Systems, and check that out. I talk about that stuff in way more depth, way more nerdy, and you can just DM me on there. But if you want to talk about training stuff, go in there in more depth. But if you want to talk about lifestyle stuff, some things that you can do to make sure you're building muscle, especially if you're going in and training and providing the stimulus, is to eat enough protein. So there's still research coming out on this. We're still undecided on the exact, very perfect number of grams of protein to eat per day to maximize muscle growth. But if you want a safe number that's easy to remember, 1 gram per pound of body weight per day is a pretty good measure to make sure you're covering all your bases, whether you're massing or cutting or just maintaining your body weight. So spreading that out over 2 to 5 meals is probably a good idea too, to kind of create some spikes and allow your body to process that and provide a constant influx of essential amino acids that your body can continue to construct new muscle using those resources. But yeah, over time, just making sure you're getting in enough protein per day. It'll be a little higher one day, a little lower the next day, completely fine. But about 1 gram per pound. So if you're a 200-pound guy, 200 grams of protein per day. If you're a 120-pound woman, 120 grams of protein per day, split over 2 to 5 meals is probably a pretty good idea. Sleeping 7 to 9 hours per night is an amazing thing for lots of health markers, but especially building muscle or conserving it during a cut. So this is not just time that you spend in bed on TikTok. This is like real eyes closed sleep time from the time you go to bed till when you wake up. If you want to have a cheap sleep tracker that you throw on your wrist, it's probably a good idea if you don't know how much sleep you're getting. They're relatively unaffordable on Amazon now, so you can just, or wherever you go shop for that stuff, you can go find one now and wear it and start to track your sleep. It's probably a good idea if you don't know how much you're getting, but 7 to 9 hours of real good shut eye at night is a good idea for building muscle. And then deloading when needed. So once people get in the gym, if you're kind of a gym junkie and you're pushing super hard, you do want to make sure you're actually deloading and giving your body time to recover. So if you have your workers out on a site for 4 to 8 weeks and they're busting their ass working weekends, they're doing all this stuff, they're all beat to shit, and they get the job done, it might be practical to just put a different crew on something else and to give that crew a little time off. Now, you don't have two crews to do all the stuff you need done. So unfortunately, you may just have to take a nice light week for a deload week, reduce your volumes, reduce your training intensity, and allow your body to actually recover so it's ready for another good training block. And just being consistent over time is more important than pushing super hard for a year straight. It's not practical and likely for you to stick with it. So deload intentionally so you can reduce some of your fatigue and continue to push hard and intelligently. And then staying consistent for months and months and years, as I talked about. This stuff helps you into your later years. It helps you right now as well with lots of things, but it helps you into your later years. So you want to find a routine that I was talking about before. You want to find a routine that serves you well and that you can be consistent with because it benefits you the longer you can stick with it. You don't have to get bigger all the time, but just maintaining that muscle mass, getting to a physique you like, building some muscle, and becoming resilient and a stronger, more confident version of yourself is important. So being able to do it for a long period of time, for months and then years and even decades, is really important to be able to keep that piece of you in your life for your training and building that muscle mass and retaining it. So some final words for you. Hypertrophy training, building muscle, resistance training can be for everyone. It's not really just for people who want to look bigger or stronger or whatever. It's not just a vanity thing. Has lots of health benefits. So if you see people in there who don't really, you don't feel, you know what they're trying to do in there. You're like, what the hell is this person doing? Why are they even here? We just talked about all these amazing reasons, and they might be in there for different reasons for you. They might not be, shooting for big biceps. They might just be in there trying to make sure they're keeping their blood sugars in check, trying to build muscle to make sure they can, live longer to play with their grandkids or, hang out with their wife or see AI evolve into some super cool stuff. So they're just trying to live their life in there. And there's lots of reasons people train. So it really can be for everyone. I think it can benefit most people to get in there and build muscle and to train and learn to be consistent with it. And as I keep mentioning, progress and consistency over time is more important than trying to be perfect or waiting for the right time to get into the gym. So if you're really busy, there may be times where you have to dial back your training volume, but it's probably good to find the right amount of time that you can be in there, dedicating to yourself and dedicating to your health and this, practice that's going to lend itself to be a really good long-term investment in a healthier version of you, both mentally and physically. So it's just more important to find a routine, a coach, a community that helps you to be consistent with your actual training, and then also find ways to progress. People get bored and burnt out if they don't progress. So that's why I like to put progress in there. And it looks different for different people. It might be massing and cutting and getting as big as you can. It might be staying resilient for training for Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It might just be having enough muscle on your body so that when you are doing Pilates class, you don't, snap your hamstring or something because it's just like a tendon at that point. There's no real contractile tissue. Whatever it is for you, you just want to make it something that you can progress and find meaning in because it's really hard to stay consistent with things for decades if you just feel like you've stagnated after 2 years and you don't know how to have fun or build upon it and actually make it something that feels like it's serving you and is customized to you. So progress over time and then be consistent with it and just make sure you're not waiting for the right time or being perfect to get in the gym because it can serve you so well right now and everybody feels stupid when they first get started. So just way better and more important for you to get your ass in the gym and get started on it so that you can get to being this better version of yourself and taking these first steps. So if any of this seemed helpful for you, if you want to see me continue to improve these presentations and do better over time, but talk about cool topics as I go, make sure you subscribe and drop this a like, and then drop any comments on stuff you thought I did horribly, anything you said that I thought was dumb, or just things that you like and you want me to talk about in the future. I'd be happy to break these down. Really brings me joy to bring useful information to you guys. So if there's anything that you guys enjoyed about this, let me know that too. I do want to make sure I'm catering this to you because that's who I'm doing it for. So appreciate you guys watching, and I will catch you in the next one.